Namaste. Welcome to our satsang. Before we begin, I want to do a commercial. After all, this is America. This is our latest book, Sanatana Dharma, the Eternal Religion. It's not by me. It was written by a committee of professors at the Benares Hindu University over 120 years ago, and is a remarkable book in that it puts in just these pages, it's about 150, 160 pages, a really excellent overview of Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion, often called Hinduism, though that's not the most correct term. And I think you'll find it very, very useful. I bought it over 50 years ago, and I must confess to you, I only read it a few months ago. I'm very good at that, buying a book and God knows how many years later, take it off the shelf. And I was really, really, really impressed with it. It's truly amazing. And I love the cover because it's the ghats in, bathing ghats in Benares. And especially one ghat where I used to love to go sit in the evening. And anyhow, therefore, all right, now let's begin. Good. All right, I'm reaching in. I've got the magic box, and I'm drawing them out. Now, by the way, I will today answer all the questions. That is, after an hour, our satsang will end. I'll continue here. I will answer the rest of the questions, and they'll be posted on our website under the title October Questions and Answers. Last month's, for example, is September's Questions and Answers.
November.
Oh, is this November?
Yeah.
Okay, that was October's. All right, well, you know, when you're just so heavy, after all, time means nothing to great souls like me. In other words, someone is only half here. All right, fine. What time do you recommend sitting for meditation? For how long? Well, it's believed in India that 4 o'clock in the morning, it's called Brahma Muhurta. The problem is that the calculation of time sort of slides to be exactly correct according to the Indian type of reckoning. But it's about 4 in the morning. Brahma Muhurta is considered especially good for meditation. I'm sure there is a knowledge of magnetism and the shifts in the biomagnetic tides that make that so. But it also does happen to be before anybody else gets up, and so you won't have all kinds of noise going on. So that's one reason why. But it's very good. But the truth is, any time is right for meditation and good for meditation. One of the ways you know whether a yoga is authentic or whether it's a makeup by someone is that you don't have all these rules. Oh, this is the time. This is, oh, you just must meditate then. I belong to a yoga cult that would say, never meditate sitting on your bed because it has sleep vibrations. If that doesn't sound superstitious, tell me what. Sleep vibrations. As sleep vibrations, and you'll tend to fall asleep. Well, their stuff would put you to sleep. It was so boring. But believe me, There's no problem at all. In fact, you can meditate anywhere. You can meditate in the New York subway. If you really want to do it, you'll be able to do it if you practice the right practice. And that's the truth. So know this when it's like, oh, you've got to have this and you've got to have that. And you've got, oh, you must face this direction. This is what I call the animal yoga. In other words, it's just pure materiality, even if it's subtle vibration, it's still materiality. And they are slaves to it. And they are caught in space and time. Our self never is caught there. So if you are practicing a method which opens the self to you, then you don't have to bother. How's that for a rant? For how long? Don't ever torture yourself. Again, there are people that have self-loathing. So every time they take up a discipline, they make it a way to beat them they turn it into a club to beat themselves over the heads with because they hate themselves. So like, don't you ever move in meditation. Oh, you shouldn't shift. Oh, for heaven's sakes. If you feel like it, stand up, walk around the room and sit back down. You're not a slave. Who's trying to make you a slave? Don't let yourself make you a slave. So, start out meditating. I'd say surely you should try 15 minutes. And then if it works nicely, up into 20 and up to 25 and go to half an hour. Find what works for you. And of course, the longer you walk, the farther you go. So the longer you meditate, obviously, the more effect you get. So just keep in mind, just keep progressing. We prefer 3 to 4 hours here, but I wouldn't recommend that to a person starting out unless there's a chance they have strong samskaras from a previous life and their subtle bodies are in such a condition that'll work. Try to always make it be at least an hour, hour and a half is good. But as I say, other than that, it's really up to you. The important thing is, outside of meditation, you do japa. Japa, japa, japa. Because that will really help keep your mind on a right keel. And when that is done through the day, and don't punish yourself if you forget it. I met a member of a yoga cult in India, for American yoga cult, and so the day'd be going by, and all of a sudden he'd say, "Oh, I remember to do japa." And he'd start carrying on, "How could I forget it? It's so important. I know it is." And so you know what he'd do? He'd waste about 10, 15 minutes not doing japa, but griping to himself about having not done the japa. See? The mind is tricky, and the ego is tricky, and it can make us do the most pious and religious things as long as it keeps us from doing what we're supposed to be doing. So that is important, though, because then meditation is just simply, well, you sit, you close your eyes, and you do it. Before, you didn't sit and close your eyes, but it's the same process. Obviously, in meditation, you will be able to experience subtle things that you couldn't in the midst of the distractions of ordinary life, such as that noise that's going on from the smartphone behind us. So anyway, but again, don't beat yourself up. Are there any plans to release audio versions of your books? Well, because of this, seeing this just some minutes back, we've begun to decide to begin to look into it and see this. So hopefully it will happen. Yes, okay. How do I get over my guilt of not practicing as a Christian? I was an evangelical Christian, and the guilt lingers and constantly attacks me mentally. Evangelical Christianity being very dogmatic and narrow in its tolerance. Please help. Michael, I understand completely. I was a member of a very, very fundamentalist church. I'm glad to say they weren't mean-spirited. See, there's two kinds of Protestants. There's the Calvinists and the Wesleyans. The Calvinists, of course, come from that utter monster, John Calvin. And it's like, we're all ought to go to hell and we're all sinners and God. We're hateful in the sight of God. They say this, I'm not exaggerating. We're hateful in the sight of God. Our sins are loathsome. Blah, 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 blah. Nobody should ever really go to heaven by their own merit, but by faith and grace. You're allowed to go, but people are no good, etc. You get it. The Wesleyans believe that we can live a pure and holy life because they come from John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church. And that human beings aren't worms, they aren't monsters, they're not devils, they're not animals. They happen to be made in the image of God. And so, luckily, I didn't have to hear the Calvinist nonsense, but there still was, Jesus is coming again, and the dead will pop up like toast out of a toaster, and you'll get judged, and you'll go to heaven forever or hell forever. And we're conditioned in this, and how many lies have we believed this stupid religion? And it is a stupid religion. So we have these samskaras, and it's our mind, but it also is the negativity of our ego mind to keep us from progressing. To go to church on Sunday and sit there and sing, every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before, you get nowhere. See? God can't be flattered. Yogananda said, I don't like the phrase, praise God. He said, I always think it makes me think of a very, very vain woman who has to have everybody tell her how beautiful she is and how she's looking especially well today. And he said, God isn't like that. So what do? The mind is a bundle of ignorance. Ignore it. Say, well, too bad for you. I'm going to go onward. And you're not real. And it isn't real. You understand? It's just a bundle of energies. And these are just some scars. So don't bother to get over the guilt. Be a yogi. Be a real yogi. Read and study about it and meditate. And then, believe me, you'll get over it. I understand your feelings. I had the very same things. What if I die and then I find it's all real? Well, I thought, well, you know what? If the God they worship is real, I don't want anything to do with him anyway. So I'd be more miserable in hell with him. I mean, in heaven with him than in hell without him. So that sounds awful, doesn't it? Sounds like a devil talking, but that's the way it is. So just cultivate faith in yourself. You don't have anything but yourself. You don't have any other authority, really. You can decide to make someone an authority, but it's all up to you. So you just go on and say to your mind, oh, shut up. I've done it, by the way, and it really works. I hope you don't think that's a very superficial answer, but it really is true. But I understand this is the poison. You have a hangover from the spiritual poison that was put into your system. But it wasn't there originally, therefore it can't last there always, and you can get it out. Definitely. All right. If consciousness is a brain function, how can you say that God is pure consciousness? And then how can you rationally justify the eternity of personal consciousness after the death of the brain? Well, if you can find anything where I ever said that consciousness is a function of the brain, I'd like to know it, because I'd sure like to remove it from any kind of writing I've ever done. The brain is the instrument of our consciousness. The brain is the instrument of the self, of the spirit. It's just a thing. It's just a machine. So that isn't true. But God is pure consciousness, but He's beyond the brain, obviously. Over and over in the East especially, they say the intellect cannot grasp spiritual realities. It can dimly have an idea and listen to spiritually awakened people who can tell you how to live, purify, and yes, condition your mind, brain, so that it can be able to perceive these higher realities directly without an intermediary. That's very definitely so. But of course, we're not going to carry our brain with us. Frankly, anybody who would think so must be next door to a four-footed animal. I can't see why any rational human being would have the idea. It's getting it backwards, which is a favorite practice in the West, to always get it backwards. It isn't consciousness and here the brain, or the brain, there is consciousness. The thing is, there's only consciousness and the brain is incidental. That's the truth. Like people will say, it's easy. Ignoramuses like me can do it. Like I could maybe right now just notice, oh, there's that, and I put my mind everywhere, because when I was born, the astrological sign of Gemini was on the horizon. So I have what they call Gemini rising. And Gemini, one of its characteristics is, oh, here, there, that. Yeah. Whoop, what about that over there? But you understand, I don't have a scattered mind because Gemini was on the horizon when I was born. Rather, because I have, from previous lives, a scattered mind. I was born when Gemini was on the horizon, and it reflected the consciousness of whoever was coming into it at that end of the world at that time. So this has nothing to do with it. So we're always getting cause and effect mixed up. We always get the cart before the horse, you see. And therefore, we think that there are things in our environment that we've made it, and then we think there's things in us that our environment made. But it all comes from what is, not open there or necessarily in there. It's everywhere. We're a wave on the ocean. And there we are. And then we come and we function accordingly. So, you see, it's so easy for us to trip ourselves up. Is it necessary to abstain from caffeine to succeed in meditation? Yes, if it's a matter of being like a coffee addict, absolutely, because addiction is no good in anything. Caffeine is a drug. It affects the body in a way that will affect then the mind. It is, in large amounts, especially very bad for you. The truth is, I remember a doctor, actually we brought a doctor one time to where we were living, and he gave a seminar on various aspects of health. And he said, there's enough caffeine in a cup of coffee to kill a human being. But because our immune system is strong and because the body scrambles and compensates, it doesn't kill us. But what does it do? It wakes us up. You see? It's a stimulant. And part of it is literally the body's trying to survive. Therefore, I would only use caffeine in a medicinal sense, literally, because it can have values. For example, a person who suffers from migraine headaches can, I will say absolutely will, can experience relief by drinking coffee. I mean, that does happen. But I had an uncle who was a coffee addict. I don't mean he just drank a lot of coffee. He was an addict. He could not function without it. And his skin, he was very, very light, almost white, pale skinned person. When my family first knew him, they first knew him when he was about 13 or 14 years old. So they told me, they said, once he got into the coffee habit and he drank and he drank and he drank it absurdly. I mean, he drank more than a gallon a day. It turned his skin this very dark, sallow color. And that can't be good for anybody. So I would say, if you can get along without it, don't touch it. I have known people that what they say, oh, till I get my morning coffee, I can hardly think, I can hardly function. Shouldn't that warn them that something is wrong? I knew a person that you couldn't speak to her in the morning. Seriously, if you didn't want to have a blow up, and she'd shuffle around in the kitchen, and when she got her coffee, then you could talk to her and she would be somewhat human. Now that should warn a person that they're in terrible danger. So those who are, anything that addicts you, get rid of it. Get rid of it. There are very small churches, small because people don't much like discipline, that will not touch caffeine at all, any more than they will touch alcohol. And by the way, be aware that caffeine, even if it isn't listed, is often in so-called soft drinks that frankly are all poison. And please try to avoid those. So it isn't just a matter of succeeding in meditation. If you want to live a healthy life, drop it completely. Anything that will do anything to your mind, you should feel wary of. Because it shouldn't be that way. Not if we're on the beam. All right. Soam meditation sounds very familiar to Paramahansa Yogananda's Hong Saw technique. Appreciate your views. Well, first of all, Soham isn't Hong Saw. You know, Hong Saw doesn't mean it. It's a Bengali mispronunciation of Hangsa, which means swan. And it's tantric, basically, or Bengali style tantra. And there's nothing legitimate about it, but I'll tell you what it will do, because the natural sound of the incoming breath is so, and the natural outgoing breath is hum, and you keep making an approximation of hum sa or hung sa or whatever, you are producing a conflict in the profound levels of also your astral and causal bodies that produce the breath. Some fool thought if you could reverse the polarity of the breath, since the pretense is that this is the problem that humans have, and that's idiotic. The breath doesn't agitate your mind. Agitated breath may agitate your mind. But to think, oh, I've got to get rid of the breath, I have to have the breathless state, is stupid. Because then, well, you can get enlightened when you die. You'll be in the breathless state, won't you? So you understand, there's a lot of Looney Tunes that goes on under the name of yoga. So then, what will happen to you is you'll start trying to switch the poles, whether you mean to or not, and you will feel like you're suffocating. I belonged to self-realization at one point, and everybody hated the Hong Sa technique that I knew of. In fact, one woman who'd been a member for 11 years asked another member, how long does it take to master the Hong Sa technique? What did she mean by that? She meant that it was miserable, and it made her miserable. And we were given all kinds of silly gimmicks to do to help us do Hong Sa. The answer was quit. The answer is quit any of this nonsense called Raja Yoga that is nothing more than a mixture of Tantra and Hatha Yoga. And that sounds very narrow-minded, and it is. I'm very narrow-minded. I'm very narrow-minded about iodine. I don't want to swallow any of it. As a person who knows how valueless, it's not just valueless, how harmful these practices can be, I tell you, if you want to keep it up, keep it up. But if you don't feel guilty about it, and don't let anybody blackmail you on it. Just quit it. As I said, regarding Kriya Yoga, Anandamayi Ma said to me, I have never in my entire life advised a single person to practice that method because Raja Yoga deceives its practitioners. It gives only a touch of the experience they should have, and they think they're making progress, but in time, and these are words, it evaporates and leaves them empty. And I've known lifelong Kriya yogis, that's exactly what happened. And I would practice it, go through the whole stuff. First it's Hong Sa, then it's plug your ears and go Om, 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 and then you do, oh, ah, up and down, hee-haw, like a donkey, up and down the spine, up and down the spine. And I would get to feel kind of like I'm a little ray of sunlight. I did. You'd feel like, and it scared me because I had enough objectivity. I felt like I was perfect. I felt like I was truly spirited. There was nothing more to attain. And I thought, what do you mean, man? There's a lot more for me to attain. And I realized it's like a drug. It is a drug, a euphoric drug that will, in the end, be your ruin. And I saw lifelong Kriya yogis, close friends of Yogananda, close disciples, who were officials in their organization, who looked exactly like the old sterno bums I've seen in Chicago trying to panhandle money for a drink, claiming they want, of course, a bowl of soup. And I'm very serious. I could name names, but you wouldn't know who they were, so what? All right. Okay. All right, Rita, I'm going to read this. How are you? Haven't the faintest idea, but I hope pretty well. Do you need anything from us? Yes, be a yogi. And that'll benefit the whole world, because that's true. You and I are connected to everything. And believe me, when you practice and you meditate, this is the way Swami Brahmananda, Sri Ramakrishna's really greatest disciple. Vivekananda was the most famous, but Brahmananda was the greatest. He said, just as you drop a stone in water and it creates waves that go out to the pond and even sometimes come back in, so every repetition of the mantra creates a wave in your mind, but because since your mind is connected to the universe, that wave, he said, goes out and passes through the whole range of creation and comes back. It comes back to you. Now, of course, there's different kind of mantras. But practice Soham Sadhana. If you practice Soham Sadhana, it'll make my Soham Sadhana better. And you say, inhale, exhale, you've got it. But as you inhale, mentally intone so. When you exhale, mentally intone hum. See you. Okay. Okay, fine. All right. So then. All right. You know, they have a joke about a man that had a violin and he only played one note. And that's it. He'd sit there for hours and just, it drove his wife nuts. So she said, why are you playing one note? Nobody else does that. They play melodies. And he said, well, they're looking for the note, but I found it. So I feel I found a note. So there I am. Okay, just his seed mantra. Let's talk about his seed mantra. The words bija mantra, bija means seed. There's two ways to use that term. A mantra, that is like a seed in the sense that you plant it in your subtle bodies by repeating it, both outside and inside meditation. In other words, becomes like a matrix, you could say, around which then things develop. The other is monosyllables that have a power, but because of their nature as being monosyllabic, they sort of, let's be American, pack a punch. They have a special ability. They have a special power. There are bija mantras for every one of the chakras, and there are bija mantras for various deities. This is 100% Tantra. It is not part of classical yoga at all. And a lot of fake gurus, especially that deal with the West, and knows that the people have prejudice against these Hindu deities, see, like they're on either side of me. So they say, oh no, these are just vibrations. And so they teach people to say like Om, Kling, Namah. These bija mantras are not supposed to be recited, even in tantric practice, more than a few times to quickly rouse up the energies, which isn't a thing to do in meditation either, because you're trying to make things calm. So when people go around saying this all the time, it does great harm to them. During the yoga boom, there was a very famous Swami. He maybe had more disciples than anybody, and because he was teaching a lot of people, especially in the East Coast, that, he shouldn't say, you should say Krishna's mantra. They weren't supposed to know had anything to do with Krishna, you see. So he'd say, your mantra is Om Kling Namah, or Om Hreem Namah, etc., whatever. Well, they'd recite it. Well, it agitated them. They didn't meditate hardly at all. I knew some of them were so averse to meditation. I knew one of his disciples that one time uh, there was a group and they said, well, let's sit and meditate. And this woman, Jimmy'd open a window behind her and climbed out. There are other yoga cults in America that have some forms of adding this bija mantra in, and it overloads your nervous system. It's what TM was. So they say, oh, don't over meditate in the old days. Don't meditate more than 15 minutes, etc., etc. Because people discover the toxic character of this practice. I mean, I had friends in India who had a fake guru that taught what they call Vaishnava Tantra. And he had them doing these bija mantras, and every one of them was mildly mentally disturbed. I don't mean crazy, but their minds were disturbed. And I could tell one of his disciples when they'd walk in the door. Literally, I could, because they'd come in sort of like, and I think, oh, not another one of these. And yes, it would be. So I was in Holy City, Haridwar, in an ashram outside the town. And I knew this one woman very, very well, knew her husband, and I'd often stayed in their home with them. So one day, to my amazement, the door to my kutir opens up and they walk in. And Shyamji said to me, Swamiji, my wife is about to go insane. And I brought her to you because I can't do anything with her. I don't know what's wrong with her. But she thinks God hates her. And she thinks about it and talks about it all the time. God hates her. Now, anyone should know yoga shouldn't do this to you. So we sat down, and I mean, I had to, believe it or not, I was so rude often when I give answers to you, but I believe it or not, I really can be diplomatic. And so carefully I said, but do you believe this literally? Yes. So we talked. I said, if you've been told to not tell me, not to tell anything, and you feel that that's right, you shouldn't tell it, then don't. But as much as you can, tell me your practice. Well, it was all this slim, cream, lean, cream stuff, and over and over and over and over again. And then through the day, she was doing things with bija in it. Oh, some things about Krishna were mixed in with ordinary Sanskrit words, but always with these bijas. I said, have you ever heard of Vaishnava Tantra? A Vaishnava is one who worships Vishnu. And so is anyone who worships the avatars of Vishnu, including Krishna. I said, have you ever heard of Vaishnava Tantra? No, she said. I said, well, this is it. What this man taught you. This is not legitimate Vaishnavism even. This is simply tantric. You are ruining your subtle bodies and now your physical bodies and now your brain by this practice. And I don't ask you to believe me. What I am asking you is, will you stop it right now? And then come see me tomorrow morning. But for now, stop. Will you do it? And she said, yes, I would. I will. We were lucky because her husband couldn't have made her do it because he couldn't read her mind. She promised me she would. See, I'd been in their home. She was always tensed up. She was give no love to her children at all. In fact, she was always fussing at them and demanding about them and so on. So anyhow, all right. So away they went. The next morning, they came in. She was smiling. We sat down. They sat down. Sorry, I was already seated. I said, "How are you?" She said, "I know now God is with me." Think of that. Think of that evil practice. And it's throughout India on many levels. I mean, there are people, you think it's unusual for yogis to commit suicide? It's not at all unusual for fake yogis to commit suicide. Their yoga so twists their mind that they'll have some reason they'll kill themselves. I knew a man. He was practicing some kind of phony, idiotic yoga. He went to the Himalayas where he could meditate, and it would be, supposedly more effective. So he went far, far into the Himalayas, and he lived by himself. There was nobody around for miles. And he practiced this, and he got into this euphoric state. And he decided, I'm self-realized. I've got liberation. See, unlike her, where she was feeling like, he was feeling, So he thought, well, there's no more reason to live. The purpose of the human body is to attain moksha. I've attained it, so I don't need to live in the body any longer. And so he went out the door of the kutir, and he walked, and he just walked in a direction. He thought, when I come to where, I'm the edge of one of the cliffs, I'll just step off. Then I won't be bothered with the body and all the problems of human life anymore. So he went walking. And fortunately, he came to a field that was filled with tens of thousands of beautiful, beautiful flowers. And he thought, I'm just going to sit here and enjoy this. But you see, he had quit that nonsense because, well, he was enlightened, no longer needed to do that anymore. And he sat there and he felt at peace. And of course, he's in the Himalayas. Think how many great yogis are there whose vibrations are certainly moving through the air. And after about 20 minutes, he thought, why would I ever thought of killing myself? So he just, went home. And became a real yogi, by the way. But you see, it destroys the health, and it destroys the mind. But the problem is, as they say, people will worry and they'll say, am I crazy? And the thing is, crazy people never wonder if they're crazy. Crazy people are convinced that they're absolutely sane. Bishop Sheen, Bishop Fulton Sheen, those of you older may remember him, wonderful. He was a great holy man. He was a yogi, by the way. He was a Roman Catholic bishop and very famous for his books and television. He had a weekly television program, all America watched, a lot of non-Catholics also. What they didn't know was he was a yogi, and he practiced meditation every day, very, very, very faithfully. Well, anyway, I rented the county road where he was in New York City, and someone came and said, look, there's this there's this woman dying, and she's not asking for any help, but I know she's Catholic, so please come with me. I'll take you to her. So he did. He went. When he walked in the room, she looked at him and said, "There's no need to bother with me. I am the worst woman in New York. I'm beyond any ability for anyone to say." And he said, "No, you're not the worst woman in New York, because the worst woman in New York would say, I'm the best woman in New York." So it is with our delusions. Someone sent this to me. It wasn't for the satsang, but I got it in email today, and it was just too good. I wanted to share it with you. Decades have gone by, but Billy Graham, do you know the name? He was a famous evangelist. He went all around the world. He had a thing called the Hour of Decision that people listened to, and he banged away with the usual hellfire business and so on, and had people sing songs about I'd rather have Jesus than anything in the world and all this stuff. He went to India. Of course, he went around the world and everybody said, "Oh, they're going to accept Christ. It's wonderful, wonderful." Well, if you know about him, I'm going to tell you a little story. They say he went to India and was a great success. Yes. I knew two people that were there. And imagine the idea. This is a holy man, it must be. So in India, all India knew, Billy Graham's coming to Calcutta. So literally from the morning of the day where he would be speaking in the evening, traffic couldn't move in Calcutta. It was a total jam. You understand? Thousands and thousands and thousands of people all flooded into Calcutta to hear the holy man from America speak. I understand a bit like this because when I was living in this ashram in Haridwar, during pilgrim season, I was besieged day and night because people wanted to see an American who came to India to follow the religion and practice meditation. I was such an oddity, they all wanted to get a look at me. So anyway, Billy Graham, much more well known, there it was. So then, and there were like 100 to 200 people that were there as helpers to help people, to pray with people, to help them get saved, all right? So anyway, the place was jammed, and like I say, the streets were jammed, and loudspeakers broadcasted throughout Calcutta his talk, and of course, many thousands were there to see him. So he did his performance, and the next evening, there were about 8 hardcore Western missionaries there, and not one Indian, and nobody else. And they had afternoon also sessions preached by a man whose father-in-law I actually knew. And nobody came to those. So they packed up and they left. But the Protestant magazines throughout the world told people that Billy Graham was in India just turning them to Christ. Right and left and here and there. And even the Indian Christians who had come to help in this thing, they wouldn't go back. So there you have. They all said he's a fraud. You're right. They were right. Here we go. I love this. This is a real true thing. Billy Graham was holding a revival among the Africans, and they started mildly laughing among themselves. Billy Graham, after he had finished, asked an African assistant what they were laughing about. The assistant told him, now here's the assistant's words, God the Father, Jesus the Son, but no mother? Logical, right? No mother. Now, of course, in Eastern Orthodoxy and Catholics say, they say, well, there's the Virgin Mary, she was a mother. But no, if we're talking about a Trinity, and there's three people in the Trinity, where's the mother? Well, of course, it is the Holy Spirit, it's Mahashakti. But these ignoramus do not know it. So there you have it. But there's something for us too. It's true. There is the supreme consciousness of Father. And then in us is the individual consciousness that is the Son, because we're all sons of God. And then there is that power, that energy in which our consciousness is floating and through which we are living. And as yogis, doing sadhana. And that energy, that Shakti, that is the mother. Way deep inside of us, that self in everybody, doesn't matter if on the outside they think they're women, is Purusha. Purusha means male, actually, also in Sanskrit. Also means person. And the outside part of us, like you're saying, that's formed of energy. So that's the mother. In a sense, you're looking at the mother and I'm looking at you, the mother. And people always talk about a well-rounded personality. What would that possibly be? Anyway, I've never seen it. But also, you know, imbalance and all this kind of talk. Well, the truth is, if the mother is left out of your spiritual consideration, both in the sense of just the general cosmos, but most important, sadhana shakti, then you're not going to get any sun. There's not going to be any birth of consciousness. I'm writing right now a commentary on the Devi Mahatmya, means the glorification of the goddess. It's a scripture. And it talks about the manifestations of the mother goddess in higher worlds. And it happened in higher worlds, but it's also symbolic. And so I'm writing about that, and I hope it will be of use to people. But without the mother, there isn't anything. Can you be born without a mother? No. So, through the Shakti, especially through the mantra Shakti, that's how you become a son of God. All right. In various writings of yours, you praise Soham as the best mantra, and also that the best mantra is the name of God. Soham, however, is not a name but an affirmation. How you recognize these? Well, I recommend you read Soam Yoga, because in Soam Yoga, this is all explained. That it is a name of God, and the oldest Upanishad, or the two oldest Upanishads, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and the Isha Upanishad, they both speak of Soham. In the Brihadaranyaka, it says, in the beginning there was nothing but the Purusha, the infinite consciousness, the infinite being. And in the very big first part, remember in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, which is a quote from the Krishna Yajurveda, and not original with St. John the Apostle at all. All right. So this says there, in the beginning was the Purusha, and the Purusha first said, Soham Asmi, I am Soham. in the Ishopanishad, it gives us instructions of what to do when we're leaving our body. And it says that we should say, Soham Asmi. I am Soham. So it's your name and it's my name and it's God's name. And it's everything. It's the name of the cosmos. This is a manifestation of Soham. If you don't practice Soham Yoga, you'll never know that to be true. And I wouldn't blame you at all in doubting it and thinking that's an extreme state. But I'm telling you, you can find out for yourself if you practice Soham Sadhana as I've outlined there in the book, and which you can read on our website, or you look at even just what's called an Introduction to Soham Yoga, which is a booklet. The same instructions are given there. If you do that, and you do it enough, don't be like, there was a really good comic strip, and I no longer remember the artist's name. It was called BC. It was all about as if suddenly cavemen had just appeared on the earth and they're discovering the world and exploring it. And it was very funny, very clever, very insightful. And in one of it, it showed one of the little cavemen climbing a high mountain. They climb way, way up. And he goes up and he looks in the 4 cardinal directions. And then as he climbs down, he says, "So much for the whole world." So don't expect at all you'll get the whole world right away, but you will come to understand this in time. I practice various mantras and so on, and Hong Song and all this stuff. But when I practiced Soham Sadhana, then I knew I had it. I haven't changed my mind. All the other stuff I did before, I did it on faith. Oh, Master so-and-so said to do this. Great yogi so-and-so said to do this. All these great beings, they said, this is the way, or that's the way, or the other thing is the way. And Sri Guru, because I was a fool, I fell into Guru trap 4 times. Guruji said, and Guruji is with God, or is God. Without Guru, you can't get anywhere. So on blind faith, like a fool, I did all that. I wasted over 50 years of my life with this crap. You wonder, some people wonder, why do you speak so straightforward like that? Because I want to help you not wake up one day and find out you've thrown your life away on trash. And that's what all those practices are. It's toxic trash too. So, I'm telling you because of what I know and what I've experienced and found to be true. And I don't ask you to believe it because I say it. That's silly. You try, you do it right. Don't do something stupid like I think I'll say, Om Namah Shivaya Soham and stuff like that. For heaven's sakes. Just do the straight practice. It will happen. Soham will teach you because it is divine. It's your own inmost self, and it's also the Supreme Self. And I'm not, this is not some poetic nonsense I'm telling you. Soham will guide you and reveal to you its nature and reveal things. I remember one morning I started to meditate and suddenly I knew there was something to do in relation to Soham. So I did it. And it really worked. And I don't mean I practiced some other method, but there was a certain thing I did which worked. And you find it out. Why should I tell you? So I don't have to reconcile what I've said about this because what I've said is right. Now, those of you who've read some of my stuff, You remember that I wrote a whole book about Om, and Om is the mantra, etc., etc. And I have no objection to say, well, if you thought Om was it for now, you think Soam's now, will it be something else tomorrow? I doubt it, but if so, that's the way it works. Because I want to get to the goal. If I decide there's something better than Soham, believe me, I'll do it. You see? And I'm not a saved Christian. I'm not a saved yogi, so I don't have to say, but I know in my heart I found it all at last. But I do know, to a degree. So yes, but I wrote that book because I had faith. The truth is, I did all kinds of refinements about it. I didn't just say, I even combined it with certain pranayamas and so on. Why? Because I knew it wasn't working, and like a fool, I didn't face it. And so I tried to gussy it up and make it into something. And it was complicated, and maybe it'll work then. And it had effects. I get a buzz in my head and so on. Om at the chakras, ooh, yes. But it was nothing. I took it on faith, which the Protestants like to talk about, and I ended up with nothing but faith. When I tried Soham, I found out for myself. What I'm telling you is not what I believe, but what I know. And you see, I got an ego like everybody else, but I don't have such a poison ego that I'm embarrassed to tell you that I didn't get the right idea, and I wrote books on it, and I used to advocate it, and I was wrong. You see? And if you want to say, well, then you don't know what you're talking about now, all right, God is in you. Then say it. Believe it. Nirmalananda doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just a snake oil salesman. Fine. Again, why would I care? You think I'm going to say, oh no, people will think I'm unreliable, and I can't forget that. All right, I'm not going to stop at this time because I just have a little bit more and questions. So we shall go on. Feeling stuck in spiritual practice. Why is it that does this? Do I need to change my spiritual practice and move on to something different? If you are practicing it exactly as you're supposed to, and you practice for what you consider a long enough time. Now, see, people have different samskaras. I have known people that saw books on Hatha Yoga and could do all the most difficult postures immediately. Well, they'd done it in a previous life. So a lot of success has to do with whether you've ever done it before. But if you are doing it for the first time, how long should you find that it works? Well, first of all, let's look at you. Find the principles of yama and niyama. I don't want to take any time on that. You can look them up and see. Look them up on our website. Do you practice yama niyama? Are you a pure vegetarian? Do you avoid alcohol, nicotine, and mind-altering substances? And I don't mean since 2 weeks ago. It can take months to get this poison out of your system, and means out of your astral and causal bodies. And let's face it, our experiences are that. We say spiritual experiences, but the only spiritual experience is consciousness. So anyway, if that's so, then I can't feel any reason why you wouldn't figure it out. You wouldn't know in 1 month of practice. I mean real practice, not 15 and 20 minutes. And then you're doing the japa through the day, you'll find it out. And if you don't, Well, you didn't spend any money, so I can't give you your money back. How to control emotions and be top of my career when I have to learn unknown technical things as well as how to manage between family and career. Well, of course, practice meditation. And conform your life to it. And if these things prevent you from conforming your life to it, then you either quit them or you quit the meditation, all right? Don't bother with Soam Yoga if you're doing, why should you wash yourself with one hand and slap mud on yourself with the other? It's crazy. So you have to decide also if these things are in conflict. If they are, then it's up to you what to do. I'm not going to tell you to stop it because my time's occupied with what I'm doing. I have no business telling you, but I will tell you that. And you see, emotions are vibrating, and they come especially through psychic energy, astral energies. They can happen because we have toxic energies in our astral bodies. There are people you say, what a bossy personality. They're always mad at everybody all the time, or this or that. Well, oftentimes the poor people are poisoned. So you take the poisons out, in case you think you have some, and then it won't be a matter of controlling. They won't arise. I can tell you that. And you just have to, there's Janaka, King Janaka was the king of Mithila. He had a kingdom. He was the richest person in India. That's why if somebody's really rich in India, they say he's as rich as Janaka, okay? He ran a kingdom. That meant he had an army also. He was a Kshatriya after all. He was fabulously wealthy. And he was the greatest yogi of his time. How did he do it? It's easy. He did it. But this I can tell you. I've had times in my yoga life where I have thought, if this is going to keep me from meditating, or if this is going to hinder my progress in any way, it goes. I quit meat immediately, of course. Fortunately, I'd never smoked cigars or cigarettes, and I'd never drunk alcohol. But I quit meat, and I quit anything I felt would be impure, and I went onward. And if you think the price is worth it, pay it. If you don't do it. There is a time where you have to say what matters. You've lived hundreds and hundreds of lives as a deluded human being. A few dozen won't make much difference. So if you want to keep that situation, keep it, you know. If you don't have enough motivation to say everything goes, and this has to remain, and only what remains is what goes, then you don't have the motivation. Therefore, why be a dud? You know, take up a hobby. Are there stories of people existing before Adam and Eve? Well, I mean, that's just something from the Bible. And they would say no. And I would say, I don't know. But we do know that there were great beings called Manus. Now we think of a Manu as being in charge of a whole segment of time in the development of the world, and that's true. There is a number one Manu. But it seems, and I say seems, I'm not going to tell you this is true. It seems from things I've read in the Shastras that there must have been more than one Manu at a time. Perhaps they were junior Manus, main supervisor and assistant supervisors, I don't know. And they seem to have had functions regarding the different strains of mankind. And that's all I know to say. May be true, may not be true. One thing is true. It has been established. I'm sorry, I can't refer you to the information on the internet, and I don't know if there's anything on our website, but absolutely various scientists have said positively the entire human race came from two people. That we all are one family, and we all come back to two people, a man and woman. Where'd they come from? So, of course, we say Brahma. I would say Brahma made them. A great Prajapati just, put them on the earth. The Adam and Eve story takes place mostly in the astral world. That is a record of the so-called fall of Adam and Eve and so on. That took place in the world just above this world. But you can look up on our website. Just look up at Adam and Eve. I believe it's true, but it's not a very interesting thing to me, because you understand the whole picture isn't in this book, but the whole picture is in this Sanatana Dharma. And you're not going to get it from the Bible. You're not going to get it from the Quran. You're not going to get it from the Buddhist sutras. In fact, you'll get far more foolishness than you will any real steady stuff. There it is. That will tell you what you need to know. And it's fine for me if you don't believe it, but I tell you, it's wonderful. There is nothing more wonderful as far as the intellect goes than Dharma. It says there is no Dharma higher than truth. It's true. And there's no truth higher than Dharma. See, it works back the other way. So this is what we're talking about. You see this? What's that? You'll say it's water. This is a Ganga. The Ganga comes into this world from the higher worlds. It starts out as a little trickle. In fact, it's coming out. I was fortunate enough to know a very great yogi who knew people that had experience of this, and he had had some experience of this. If you trace the Ganga back as far as you can, and it doesn't just come from, it's a place called Gangotri, and you find it's just a stream. It's coming out of a cave. He knew yogis that had gone into the cave and traced it back and ultimately came out of the cave. And they found that this was an open area, and that the water was literally, as if of its own accord, coming out of this, dropping down and going down and joining the stream. That is coming directly out of the astral world. Now, maybe that isn't true, but I believe it. And I can tell you my own experience, which has very, very little great validity to it. But I had read about the Ganga. Yogananda said it couldn't be polluted, and they had tested and found that even if there was a dead body floating in it, that just so many inches away, it was totally without any harmful bacteria or any elements. Well, I believed it. I thought, why should he lie? But that it was divine, that it was something supernatural, well, I didn't believe it, which is just fine. Why not? But I landed in Calcutta in the early morning. Later that day, a person whose name I'd been given and whose house I'd gone to when I had gotten to Calcutta said, well, let's go to this particular ashram. This ashram was on the bank of the Ganges. So I said, fine. So he was rich, he had a car, so we got in the car, we went there to the ashram, and he said, the Ganga's in that direction. So I went walking in a direction, and suddenly I saw it. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that I almost fell in. It was such a shock to me because I saw it was divine consciousness. Now, everything really ultimately is divine consciousness, but this was divine consciousness revealed. It was pretending to be water, but it was divine consciousness. Never changed my mind, especially because not only have I immersed myself in the Ganga and seen the effect it had, but again, I was a yogi. So, I mean, you know, dogs and cats can jump into the Ganga. They don't experience anything. But especially, there is a point on the Ganga called the Triveni. It is at a place called Rudraprayag. The Mughals gave a phony name of their own to it, and I'm not even going to say the word. At Prayag, the three holy rivers, the Ganga, the Jumna, and the Saraswati, come together right there. And this is the most powerful place on earth as far as holy waters go, if you call them waters. And if you immerse yourself with the Triveni, well, it'll do something to you. It'll depend on the individual whether they experience it. And I have done that. I have gone to the Triveni, and I'm telling you, it was one of the most significant incidents of my life. Because it isn't physical. It is something much more. And that's my experience. And so Sanatana Dharma itself is that great river. And I'm not a travel agent, but I will recommend it to you. But that's all up to you. Some of us have some scar, and then some don't. So that should be it. Thank you for your great patience. Thank you for listening to this old duffer just bumble on. But I enjoy it greatly.